Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Haynes. I'm an audiobook narrator, and this is part of my series on accent work from some of the top narrators today. I am interviewing Steve Corona, and Steve has an MA in theater arts from MNSU, forgive me. His background is in teaching college level classes, and that has, Steve, I understand, driven your passion to continually learn new things and share that knowledge. In addition to being a sought-after audiobook narrator, Steve has over 18 years in other areas of voiceover with clients including Disney, CBS, Netflix, Sony Pictures Television, and many more. A keen ear, obviously, for accents and dialects, which led to a career as a dialect coach. And he has coached actors from every inhabited continent in over 40 accents from around the world. And Steve, forgive my stars in my eyes. It's not just the computer reflection. Your clients have included Oscar-winning actress Dame Helen Mirren and Sparta 300 Gerard Butler.
That's right.
And the experience must have been invaluable to you as a stage, screen, and voice actor yourself, and voicing multiple characters in audiobooks. Example, a 24-hour fiction title recently that required you to perform 93 speaking characters using 28 accents.
Yep.
Woo-wee. So, where do we start? How did this all start for you? What was your starting point?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate this. Um, I think like a lot of people who use accents, a lot of actors, I started as a kid, screwing around, just kind of repeating what I heard on TV and movies with my family, with my siblings. I'm fourth of five, so I was sort of the entertainer of the family. Um, but then fast forward to college, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, there's a way I can actually properly study this. Like, not just listen and repeat, but actually look at an accent, a dialect, break it apart to its key sounds and see, the influences and all the different parts of what makes that, and learning how to go from how I speak to virtually any accent really got me excited. And I was taking a dialects class, and I had a professor who prided himself on trying to trip up the students because he told us, if you can survive me, then you might have a chance at the real world as an actor, one of those kind of philosophies. And, looking back, he wasn't wrong. He did push us, and I understood where he was coming from. And so in this particular class, it spoke to me. It made a lot of sense to me, whereas other classes maybe didn't. I was not a big musical theater kind of guy, which was his forte. And so I struggled there, but I really excelled in the dialects class. And I just took to it. And he kept trying to trip me up, and I would just get A plus, A plus, A plus. He couldn't find anything wrong with what I was doing. So finally he got so frustrated. I think I had just performed my piece in class for we were working on a French dialect, and I got done, and he said, Parlez-vous français? And I said, no, I just speak English with a convincing French accent, And he said, okay, you should just teach the class. So I got up and I started walking to the front. He said, sit down, I'm going to lose my job. Uh, it's like, I can't be having you teach the class. Anyway, and he said, listen, I see that you definitely have an aptitude for this. And I also see that some of your classmates have been studying with you and their grades have been getting better. So, I highly recommend you consider after graduating looking into becoming a dialect coach. It's
Hmm.
definitely something that I could see you excelling at.
Hmm.
I had no idea what that was at the time, but I'm glad I at least listened and that seed was planted in my mind because fast forward, I checked it out and here I am, 18 years later of doing this both as an actor and a coach. And so that's kind of how it started in grad school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, I envy you, and at the same time, you are human too. So let's take comfort in our mutual misery, which is that we sometimes have voices in our heads saying what?
Voices in my head. Oh
Yeah.
man. I mean, I think because I've spent so much time doing this and, I spent the time in grad school and I feel like I've got a very high standard for myself in performing accents. And I think whether or not this is true or not, I sometimes have this voice in the back of my mind that other people are judging me at that same high standard that I have for myself.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's the thing I have to constantly battle against and reminding myself when good enough is good enough for a
Hmm.
performance. Um, and knowing and trusting my training, um, and making sure that I'm doing enough work to get the job done without driving myself crazy, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's so easy to lose sight for me of the bottom line, which is like any industry, this one is based on service. So I serve the client and serve the audience and any other bits of glory and greatness and stuff like that. Okay, all right, fine. You know, if they come, they come. But Patrick Stewart, I was listening to his memoir. You heard
oh,
that one yet?
yes, and I love it.
Right. So you
Good.
remember that part where he's
Making it
just
so.
like every single time before the cameras roll, I don't give a damn, you
Yes.
know?
Love Patrick Stewart.
And so when you are working for to master a new accent, what are my understanding is that you have a specific technique that's a checklist. And tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember taking a dialects class a long time ago with Eric Singer, another really, really popular, successful dialect coach, very highly respected. And one thing that he said that stuck in my mind that I use in my own coaching is that he says there are three parts to a good dialect. It's the accent, the sounds that we make, the oral posture, where we place it, and the prosody, the intonation, the cadence, the rhythm, the music of it. So I'm trying to remember if I go through that list and I'm like, okay, am I making the right sounds? I sound like I'm from the right area. Am I placing it in a place where, first of all, I'm watching samples of people speaking in that target dialect or accent and
Mm.
seeing what they do physically? And if I'm
Mm,
matching that
mm,
and it
mm,
feels
mhm.
right, and then that affects the sound and it sounds right, and then I have that third element of the prosody is the intonation, am I using inflections correctly or at least consistently to somebody who would be from that area? And I've got those three areas covered. Then I feel like, okay, I'm in it now. But there's something I came up with as well as a
Mhm.
dialect coach on my own. I call it the four C's or Corona's four C's. How about that? Uh,
Eh,
so, so it's the four C's of good performance dialects.
uh-huh.
Because some people, there's this discussion about authenticity and how
Right,
authentic
right.
or real world
Hmm.
should an accent be. And I remind people we are actors. So whether we're using this for voiceover, for audiobooks, for stage or screen, ultimately, in my mind, these four things must be present for a solid performance in a dialect. So number one is clarity.
Hmm.
You have to be
Hmm.
clear. We have to understand what you're saying.
Mm.
Two is consistency. Whatever choices
Mm.
we're making, we have to be consistent to ourselves at least, so that
Yes.
we don't sound like we're from all over the place, that we've
Right.
made specific choices for a reason and that it's justified and makes sense for the character. Clarity, consistency, character. So that's sort of layering in all the other, character development work that we do as actors. The accent should just be one layer, one piece of that. So it's not about the accent. The accent just helps to help fill out and three-dimensionalize the character a bit. And
Yeah.
fourth is confidence. We have to be confident so that
Hmm.
it sounds like, oh, you're not putting it on, but you do this all the time. You are the actual character speaking. So if
Hmm.
you're clear, consistent, you have good character, and you're confident, I think those four things lend for a winning performance every time. Uh,
Mm. Mm.
and actually, if I can take a quick segue and tell another real short story
Sure, of
about
course.
confidence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was coaching Gerard Butler, and I'm helping him sound more American. But in the meantime, he's very Scottish, and so his Scottish is rubbing off on me. And his mom came to visit set one day, and he's like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, Steve, this is going to be great. We're we're going to
By the
paint
way,
my
which
mom."
movie was it?
Oh, it was for the movie Gamer.
Okay.
Yeah, I met Terry Crews on there. uh, who's it, Michael C. Hall from Dexter. Anyway,
Mhm,
great
mhm.
cast, great cast.
Yeah, yeah,
So his mom is visiting. He's like, all
yeah.
right, pretend to be Scottish. I'm like, oh man, I don't know about that. Like, is
Uh,
she gonna like hate me when she finds out I'm not? No, no, it'll be fine. It'll be hilarious. I'm okay. You know, my boss slash the guy I'm coaching, he says to do this. So his mom comes on set. He introduces me. Oh, mom, this is Steve. I really want you to meet him. Oh, hi, Mrs. Butler. And I go into my Scottish thing, and we're having a wee conversation. And she stops me. She's like, oh, wait, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm from Scotland. And she's like, oh, I know that, but what part? What part of Scotland are you from? I didn't know my Scottish geography to save my life. And I said, the north part? She's like, no, you're not. And I thought, okay, the jig is up.
right,
And
right,
she
right.
says, you're from Aberdeen, aren't you? I know that accent. And I'm like, oh, she does think I'm from Scotland, but from a different part. Okay. And I was
Yeah.
like, how long can I keep this going? And finally I couldn't. I had to give it up. So I said, listen, I'm sorry. I'm from Wisconsin, actually. She's like, oh no. And she hits me. You broke my heart. She goes to Jerry. She's smacking him. He's rolling on the ground laughing. So that for me was like that confidence of like, I just gotta go with it. And
Right,
I
right.
fooled his mom into thinking I was Scottish. So I guess that was a success.
But
So
and also isn't it something where yeah, if you're confident enough, then you can in a benign way gaslight locals by having them think, well, my goodness, I haven't heard somebody from that part of the state or from that particular area, but they must exist,
sure.
so there's that element too.
And I say that's some of the best practice you can do. Take it for a test drive in the real world. I do
Oh,
this. I go to order lunch or I go, in a store and ask for a sales associate to help me trying on different accents. I'm like, well, I have this character coming up that I need to use whatever accent. I'm going to go in and just confidently own that thing. And,
oh my goodness.
most of the
Okay.
times people believe it because I'm
Okay.
confident. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right then. All right. Well, definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. And uh, the final question that we usually touch on, speaking of developing confidence and also fooling the locals and such. So Minnesota. Let's talk Minnesota.
Ah.
And of course, Minnesota probably takes a second place, I would say, to Texan and Southern accents as probably one that a lot of people, due to exposure from a certain kind of genre and especially a certain show and movie, think they know. And I'd love to, on this video, talk about, okay, what's the real deal?
I talk about this with my kids because their aunt, my wife's sister, actually has a fairly stereotypical Minnesota accent. It's
Mhm.
not quite as strong as like in Fargo or, other shows where they're really, really like broad with their vowels and, like that, right? But it's very close. Like it's not far off. She's like, you guys want to come over and, we can go swimming in the lake or whatever. And it's hilarious to me because I'm like,
Uh-huh.
it's true. So a lot of accents, a lot of dialects are based in, I guess, stereotype, because there's some truth to it. But
Mm.
of course, in entertainment, it tends to get a little exaggerated, but not much. I remember flying back
Uh,
to Minneapolis, and the guy who drove me from the terminal to my rental car, he had a very strong Minnesota accent. Oh yeah, where are you visiting from? And I'm like, please keep talking. Let this
yeah, yeah,
drive
yeah.
take forever. So the thing is, there are people there. There's always varying levels of strength of an accent, right? Um,
Hmm.
that's true to life. And typically, I've found, not always, but the more rural the area, typically the stronger it has
Of
remained
course,
over time
of course.
versus more urban. We tend to homogenize, and we all start to sound a little bit more general American like this.
Mhm.
Slightly less regional because we're all trying to, it's human nature. We try to sound like each other.
Yes.
So there is truth that Minnesota accent does exist and sometimes as strong as that. And I saw an interview with the dialect coach from Fargo years ago, And she
Mm.
was talking about how she told the actors to speak as if like their face was frozen in a smile. And I
Exactly.
thought,
Exactly.
oh, that's
Yep.
perfect. That's
Yep.
perfect. So I love things like that when I'm coaching. Anything like physical that I can give my actors to latch on to that they'll remember, oh yeah, I'm in a frozen, northern state.
Yes.
Probably I'm cold and it would affect how I physically speak as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a for down east Maine. I love to just imagine that there's a literally like a piece of moist seaweed in my
Oh,
in my lower and upper molars in my wisdom teeth, and just sort of talk about use it like that.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that works.
coming from Bar Harbor, I mean, just right there, dear, very rubbery. Yeah. Anyway, yes, and so Steve. Are you still accessible for work for voice coaching and for jobs with voiceover and audiobook narration? I imagine so, but this is
Yeah,
a great time to give your pitch.
sure. Well, thank you. Uh,
Solicited pitch.
Solicited, yes. I've been given permission to say the following.
Yeah.
I am very busy these days narrating audiobooks, which I love. That's kind of my first love these days. But I still have a passion for helping other people with their dialect performances. And so I try to make myself available for one-on-one coaching. And people can reach me through my website or they can email me directly, steve@coronaproductions.org, and reach out. And if I have time on my schedule, I'm always happy to try to jump in and help out however I can. A lot of times it looks like a half-hour session on Zoom, something like this. We jump on, I see where you're at already. I don't necessarily reinvent the wheel and start from the beginning. A lot of
Mhm.
times actors just need that little tweak. And again, that confidence piece, that's me listening and saying, okay, let's
Mhm.
tweak this. Otherwise, you got it. You sound great. Go with it. So that's mainly what I'm doing these days. I'll do guest kind of, lectures, classes, things like that. I used to do my own ongoing classes, but that took up so much time that I just don't have time
Right,
for that anymore. So
right.
mostly it's one-on-one coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, well, also the fact that it took up so much time really speaks to your integrity, and being able to say, hey, that it does take a lot of time to do that. I don't have time for that now. It's
I
yeah,
will have time for you, Matt.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Thank you. I
perfect,
appreciate it.
folks. I'm Matt Haynes. This is Steve Corona, and as your narrators, entertainers, and teachers, I hope that our voices and your ears meet again real soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.